This is VikesNow with Dustin Baker. I am here with Ben Leber. How are you, good sir?
I'm doing great, Dustin. How you doing, man?
Not bad. I'm happy to have you as the first player guest on this YouTube adventure of mine. I appreciate it.
I'm the first player guest.
Yes, I've had Sean Borman, who writes for Vikings Territory. Lindsey Young is coming on Wednesday, but you are the first Vikings alumnus.
Well, I feel so honored, but I'm old guy alumnus now. It's been forever since I've played.
well, well, you're wise. Let's go with that. Huh? Yep.
Sounds good. I'll take that.
All right, I got about 6 or 7 questions I'm going to hop into. The first one, I want to discuss the Vikings offensive line, or at least the pass protecting part of it. Dudes and gals like me have been frustrated with it for a long time, and kind of thought when the leadership changed over to Kwesi Adolpho-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell that they would get it. The rest of us on our couches, they would agree with us. So far, they've taken a few measures of mid-tier gentlemen to fix the pass protection. And I want to know from you, do you think that the Davises, Chris Reed, and Oli Udo going into the draft or training camp, is that a sensible solution for the pass protecting part of the offensive line?
I think for right now, yes, it's a sensible solution. I don't know. The thing that I kind of push back at with the Vikings fans, and I'm a little confused with is, and I guess every fan base probably does it. Where did they think that the Vikings were going to get splashy? There wasn't a lot of money to be spent. They did have to get creative a little bit, and I just think that every time a big name comes up or there's a rumor about a big name maybe going someplace else, all over Vikings Twitter, all you say, why didn't we get that guy? Like, what are we doing? We're just sitting on our hands. Well, yeah, we have to because we don't have a lot of money to throw around. So I think they had to go in it very strategically, figure out the right type of guy, the right tier of player, and see if they can plug it in as far as the offensive line. I just don't think that they were going to be big buyers. And so I was never surprised that they weren't, first few days, tier one buyers of offensive line. I think that they get it. I think that they understand that, we need to fill some holes specifically at right guard. But I also think that you have to practice a little bit of patience with this because it is a system change. And I know that everybody looks at the offensive line as, well, how much different can one coaching staff be to the next? But it can be vastly different. And the responsibilities and duties that they ask these players to do on game day can be different from one zone scheme versus a different zone scheme. And it's my belief, and the people that I've talked to specifically at the combine, that look, I think they're a little bit higher in Garrett Bradbury than the public is. I think that with the scheme change and the new teaching style and the responsibilities that they want the center to have, I think they feel confident that they can bring out the best in Garrett. Now, if they feel that strongly about Garrett, then maybe they feel the same way about right guard. Hey, we don't have to have an all pro at right guard. We just can find a guy that's good to average, get them into a new scheme, some new teaching tape, and see if we can solidify some of that vertical penetration that they had issues with last year and the years before.
Yeah, a couple times on the show, I've said this. Ideally, especially if you're a casual fan, you shouldn't even know who the right guard is. It should
Right.
just be a dude that's decent or keeps the quarterback upright. Well, in that same vein, about a new coaching staff evaluating or perhaps having a different opinion on an existing player, give us your pulse on Kellen Mond. There was a fascination when the news regime took over that perhaps Cousins would be traded and they'd go draft their quarterback of the future. And it seems like sometimes we forget that Mond was a third rounder last year. Do you think that he projects as a sensible life after Kirk option, or is this really a wait and see, summer for him?
Well, I do think that we have to give him the benefit of the doubt to see what he's like from year one to year two. That's when you want to see dramatic jumps from every position, especially from the quarterback. But I definitely have my concerns. Look, I was not super high on him coming out of college.
Okay.
I know that you look at his turnover numbers and they got better in that new system down there. And in all fairness, it's really hard for any quarterback to come in and have to go through a system change, different quarterback. They got to do some different deals. So when Fisher took over, he wasn't a very efficient quarterback. Then the second year with him, he was much better, took care of the football a lot more. But when you watch the film on him, it's still, if you think if you think Kirk Cousins is mechanical, holy smokes, man. Like, turn on the tape of Kellen Mond in college. It's almost like you can see his brain going, read one, read two, read three. Okay, throw the ball. Okay, read one, read two. That's not quite there. Let me run. It seemed that sort of mechanical, and his body mechanics and his eyes were just very, very just like 1, 2, 3. Okay, do something else. I don't think that he's as great of a scrambler as people thought that maybe he was. And so as far as a creator, a guy that's going to proactively in pre-snap breakdown defenses and kind of know exactly where to go with the ball, I see a slowness to that. And, maybe again, with a new coach and a new teaching style, maybe things just start to click, and maybe they just give him a little bit more of a free rein to, like, hey man, just go be a player, just play with instincts, just go out there and have fun and rip the ball around. And maybe that's a big next step for him. But as far as him taking over for Kirk Cousins, I don't see that he's the guy.
Okay. A point of order for listeners. I chatted with Paul Charchian a few months ago, and he said almost the exact same thing that you just did. So I think there's some community consensus here. So be aware of that. The next topic might be the most exciting or most juicy because it's NFL draft season. The draft is 2.5 weeks away. And everybody with their mock drafts wants to get it right, or they want to, figure out where this team is headed. So I'm gonna nail you down on it, good sir.
All right.
Who do you predict if the Vikings stay at 12? This unpredictable regime. Who will they select, or will they trade back?
I know that everybody's going to hate the idea of trading back because it's going to feel like Rick Spielman 2.0. But I do think that if it's in play and they can find a suitor to move a few spots back and maybe pick up a second rounder or a third rounder, I think that would be acceptable for me, because I think this draft is going to be big. There's a lot of holes to fill. We all know that we need secondary help. We need cornerback help. We need cornerback depth. We need defensive line help. We need edge rusher help. And also you talk about the offensive line. If you feel like there's a guy that maybe you can only get in the first round or early in the second round that could fit in at right guard, then maybe you make those moves to trade back. So I think that's on the table. And I would not throw my hands up in the air and feel like, oh, here we go again. This is the exact same regime. I think for this particular instance, I think moving back could make sense. That being said, if we stay at 12, I think with Stingley having such a great pro day, he's kind of been on this roller coaster ride of great, All-American his first 2 years, and then he got hurt, and everybody's trying to like downplay him. He's not as good as people think he is. And then all of a sudden he comes back healthy, and you start seeing this incredible athlete, and you see this ability to match up with his physicality in both the run game and the pass game. And you're like, well, why wouldn't this guy be a top 10 pick? And I actually think that he kind of propelled himself back into that conversation. So if Stingley and Sauce Gardner are gone, I don't think that there is a cornerback that makes sense at 12. I think you're really, really reaching. Trent McDuffie, to me, is probably the next best cornerback, but I think Trent's more of a slot nickel guy, and I don't think that he's going to give you immediate help on the outside. And getting Chandon Sullivan to sign, I think he kind of fulfills that spot. So I think it's too high for McDuffie. Doesn't make sense for us in that spot. So I think that you have to look at defensive line, specifically edge help. Aiden Hutchinson's going to be gone. We all know that. Kayvon Thibodeau is going to be gone. We all kind of know that. So that sort of leaves you with, do you go after a guy like Jordan Davis, who would be an interior defensive lineman? You have to ask yourself, he's a first and second down guy. Look, even at Georgia, he only played 35 snaps, 40 snaps a game on a rotational basis on rundowns. A few times that he get on pass downs just because they needed a fresh body out there. Is it worth a number 12 pick to have just a first and second down guy that's only going to play 40 snaps a game? That's not for me to answer. I don't think that you're going to get tremendous value at 12 with him. So that probably leaves me with an edge rusher like Karlaftis or Trayvon Walker out of Georgia as well. I think those are the two names that I'll be watching for the most. And I think Karlaftis out of Purdue probably edges out Trayvon Walker as far as being NFL ready right now and being a 3-down player. I think Walker is probably more of just a pass rushing specialist at this point. Would
they peak at the best wide receiver on the board or not?
We've debated that as well at KFAN, and it's an interesting talker only because it's not the most position of need right now for this team.
True.
But you do have to look at what are you going to do with Adam Thielen next year and the year after that. That you're going to have to pay Justin Jefferson. This is an offense that is going to feature a lot of wide receivers. They're going to be a base 11 personnel, which brings up the other side conversation. What do you do with CJ Ham? But this is going to be an 11 personnel team. You're going to have a lot of wide receivers out there. So why not on a bargain value on a really, really deep wide receiver class, get one of the best wide receivers in this group? I can't argue with that. I just hope that if they go that route, then they better be pretty sure on the defensive line and the defense. And you better think that you're just going to outscore everybody because that's what it's going to be. That's what it's going to shape up to me.
Yeah, that was the old way of doing things about 15 years ago with Dante and the boys. McKinney talks about it on my other show pretty frequently. Putting up 30, hoping that's enough. All right, let's pivot into some of the quarterback chatter. The Rams won a Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford, and as Kevin O'Connell looked on not long ago, and the world has a pretty pristine view of Matthew Stafford before and after the Super Bowl, almost like a universal sympathy. Poor guy was on the Lions. Do you think Kirk Cousins and Matthew Stafford are worlds apart in terms of talent? And can Kirk take these damn Vikings to a Super Bowl just like Stafford did?
The short answer is yes. I think Kirk has everything that you need to win a Super Bowl. When you compare him to Matthew Stafford, it's funny. I think that he's a better passer than Matthew Stafford. I know that Matthew gets a lot of applause for just his gunslinging ability and his skill level, but I don't know about you, but when I watched him in the second half of last season, a lot of his interceptions were thrown deep down the field just because he underthrew a lot of players, and he misread a bunch of times some safety help. So from a vision standpoint, from an arm strength standpoint, I just don't think that he's the old Matthew Stafford. I think Kirk makes those throws more than people think. I think he's a way better deep ball passer and not just reaping the benefits of run after the catch. Obviously, Kirk lacks, I think, that true gunslinging mentality. No doubt Matthew Stafford has more intangibles than Kirk Cousins. So when it comes to skill, yes, he can put this team on his shoulders and he can win a Super Bowl with this team. But I agree with everybody. I do think that certain things have to go right for him. Like in a lot of championship seasons, things do have to go right, and it can't just be on the quarterback. So yes, I think the answer is yes. Kirk Cousins is the guy that can do it. He's got to have a better defense around him. I think that he's going to have a much more quarterback friendly system for him. And let's just hope that, there's enough intangibles in there when everything's on the line and you need, a fourth quarter comeback, you need a gut check time type of play. We've seen it before, but can he do it consistently in a playoff run?
Yeah, that was, you'll recall 2 years ago in the 2019 season when they went down to New Orleans and they won. That was obviously my biggest takeaway from that moment. I think I told my wife right after, like, no matter what happens the next week at the 49ers, at least that's in there somewhere with Kirk. We weren't really sure, second year at the team, but in that moment, in those two passes on that drive, it taught me, like, all right, somewhere embedded in that brain and body, he's got the G. And so hopefully it gets to extrapolate in January next year. I'll even stop you there. Even look at last year. I know that Vikings didn't go to the playoffs. How many times did he lead the team in the fourth quarter on a huge drive that I think one game he had 2 game-winning drives and the defense failed. I think he had at least 4 game-winning drives last year. And they don't always come to fruition because the defense has to do their part too. But I know it's the regular season. It wasn't clutch. It wasn't playoffs and all that stuff, but I'm with you. I think
the last couple of years, he has shown that, hey, when you need to make a big play, he has the capabilities of doing that. Now, is it always going to happen? Well, no, it's not 100%. Just like Aaron Rodgers is not 100%, but Aaron Rodgers has a lot more, a lot more of those situations under his belt than Kirk. But look, he's going to fail. We all know that. There's going to be times where he's going to fail, and we can point the finger at him. But I think I'm like you. There's glimpses in there that he can do it.
Yeah, amen. A few weeks ago, you mentioned that there was a team meeting. That was my perception, involving Cousins. I think it was this offseason when the team recommitted to him. In my circles, it was the Kirks are freaking dog meeting. What I want to know, was that like a neat little chat that we'll forget about this summer, or was that like a game changer type of discussion for the locker room?
Again, as I said on my own podcast with Paul Charchi, and it's twice now he's come up. We both love Charch. I can't go into the specifics of that of the story that I was told, but basically, I mean, you kind of summed it up in a nutshell. There was an off-season meeting that happened right after Spielman and Zimmer were fired and let go, and the most important people in the organization were all in that room, including the most important players on the team. And Kirk really stepped up, and he said some stuff and led that room in a leadership style that I think a lot of guys were surprised with. And if there were some guys in there that sort of question like whether or not he has that kind of dog in him,
Mm-hmm.
I think that was answered. But to answer your larger question, does that mean that we're going to see more wins? I don't know. I mean, look, I mean. I know that Brett Favre, my time with him, and I'm sure Brian's talked about it as well. But look, the 2010 season, I mean, there's a lot of things that went into that, and Brett's second year. But you have a guy that owns the locker room, has all the leadership and intangibles that you'd ever want, and it can only take you so far because other things have to fall into place. I don't know if that meeting is all of a sudden going to galvanize the locker room so much that they just become world beaters and like, oh my gosh, that was the enlightenment moment for this team. I just think it helps,
Okay.
and I think with a culture change, there's a vibe difference there. There's strategically a different approach. And then you add that into the long equation of what it takes to make a Super Bowl and a championship winning team. I think it definitely helps.
McKinney has told the story on the Believe show a couple times that I think there was some sort of meeting or circumstance where Favre, new to Minnesota, showed up in jeans and a hat and a t-shirt, and that was it. He was the guy. He was the coach and the leader of the team. That's how McKinney perceived it. And it's funny because it seems really Favrean that happened.
Well, it's true. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing that Favre had though was obviously his reputation preceded him. We all knew who Brett Favre was. We all 90% of what we'd heard about him came from other teammates, and just the dude had played, 15, 16, 17 years before he even joined us.
Yeah.
So we knew of him. Yeah. So Big Mac is correct. When he walked in that locker room, within 5 seconds, you knew the magnetism of which he had, and you're like, yeah, this guy's legit. Like, he's the real deal. And yeah, he had the quintessential cargo shorts on. Even in the dead of winter, he'd wear those cargo shorts because a lot of times he said that Deanna would just drop him off. So he's like, well, what do I got to wear clothes for? He's like, I get dropped off in the morning and I get picked up. I'm walking, 10 steps outside. So that's just the way he was. And yeah, one of the best that I've ever been around.
Excellent. All right. I want to finish up with 2 linebacker questions. I think they're apropos. Right now, slated in the inside of the new 3-4 defense to play linebacker is Jordan Hicks, the acquisition from the Cardinals, and Eric Kendricks. So that's 2 dudes who don't usually come off the field, but the last 2 years have shown and signified injuries can rattle a defense. In the event something happened to them and we don't draft a surefire starter and linebacker in the draft, which one of the current reservist linebackers would you forecast would step up and perform admirably, if any?
That's another question about this draft. Is I definitely think that they are going to go after an inside linebacker fairly early. Within the first, I would say I don't think that they're going to look at their interior linebackers and say, oh, we can fill that hole with a 6th rounder.
Yeah.
you look at, I love Blake Lynch. I think he has proven that he can play at this level. Now, Blake's a different player, though. He's smaller. He's scrappy. They had him blitz off the edge this last year a little bit. He played on the ball over tight ends every once in a while. He has that physicality to him. I just don't think it's going to be a big learning curve for him to learn that those two inside positions, whether you call them Mike and Mo, whatever you want to call them, the two Mike linebackers. Troy Dye, to me, is not a guy that I think is going to fit in the system very well. I don't think that he's particularly physical, especially with blocks. I think he gets hung up on blocks a little bit. I don't think that he plays with the right amount of instincts in this system. So I'm not sure I can count on him. We don't know what we have out of Chaz Surratt. He didn't play at all last year. And Ryan Conley is a bigger body guy that, is coming off injury and who knows? I mean, and then we have Tuff Borland, who's also on the team as well. He's a bigger body guy that, is not particularly, smooth in space. So I don't know. To answer your question, I'd say right now, as the defense is, Blake Lynch would be my next best linebacker on the inside. And then from there, I think it's a grab bag who you think is the fourth inside linebacker.
Yeah, you put it that way. It sounds grim. They should get one really early on. When you break it down like that, I'm like, geez, I need to get on this topic. He's got a point. All right. The last thing I want to ask, it was the most excited when I was coming up with these questions because I thought you would have some insight. So inexplicably, there has been mystery and silence about Anthony Barr's free agency. Whether it was, the only thing we know is that the Vikings, I think, would like to have him back, but with the value speech that we get from Kwesi, I don't know if it aligns with the team's current outlook. But I haven't seen any sort of things about him chatting with other teams. So what's the deal? Do you know what's going on with Anthony Barr?
I don't know what's going on with Anthony Barr, but I can only speculate it's injury related.
That's what I feared.
Look, it's all indications to me that he's got a trick knee. He's got a bulky knee that doesn't sound like it's going to be just magically fixed through a procedure. It sounds like it's one of those chronic things with his knee. So is a team willing to invest a lot of money into a guy that, may or may not be there on a week-to-week basis? I think we all know what he can do when he's healthy and he's motivated and, he's able to fly around. He's a hell of a player, a very physical player. But for this team, I think there's true reservations about what position you play him at. We just talked about, the inside linebacker spot. I don't think that in a 3-4 defense, that's necessarily his best spot. I think that he's probably better suited as an edge guy, but he really hasn't proven himself as an edge guy. When he blitzes and everybody said, hey, when he's coming out of UCLA, this is what he's known for. He's an on the ball linebacker. He knows how to get after the quarterback, but he hasn't proven it. He has a bull rush. He can be physical, but as far as pass rushing moves, as far as being disruptive, getting after the passer, he just hasn't proven it. And they probably see that too. So I think that unfortunately he's kind of caught in this football purgatory where he's red flagged because of injury. And at least on this team, where do you put him? He's kind of positionless. And for other teams, I think he's much more suited to a 4-3, which is where he came from with the Vikings. He's got a lot of great tape as that bubble side linebacker. I think that's probably the best spot for him. But again, how much money do you invest into a guy that, he takes one weird step in practice, that knee flares up on him, he's out, and he can just be unreliable.
All right. That's kind of what I feared. I'm glad that we're on the same page there. All right. Any closing arguments, any final thoughts for our listeners and viewers today, sir?
Well, not really, other than the fact that I'm very excited about this new staff and this new approach. It seems like everybody sort of walks into that facility with this ability to actually smile for once and feel like they can be happy about where they are and where they work and not feel like they're going to be sort of yelled at for making a mistake. So it sounds like there's a lot more positivity. The energy is great. And I'm going to say this, I'm going to Vegas in 3 weeks. And I think the number is 8.5 of what I heard about the Vikings.
8.5, 9, depending on the book.
Yeah. I'm going to hammer the over.
Ooh.
I think the schedule is favorable for them. I think the NFC North is favorable for them. So I'm going to hammer the over. So that's going to be my parting shot, is hammer the over. I think the Vikings are going to be better than Vegas thinks. And my last little self-promotion thing is check out my own podcast.
Oh, heck yeah.
Unrestricted. It comes out every Monday. It's a gaggle of different topics and people. Look, I've had Charch on, I've had Brett Favre on, I've had regenerative farmers on, I've had Kelly in Vegas, who works at Barstool Sports, to talk gambling. This week I've got a climate scientist from University of Minnesota. I just recorded one with Everson Griffin that's going to release next week.
Oh, wow.
So we get all his thoughts on his life and where he's going right now. So check it out.
Oh, absolutely. Especially that one at Everson, because that's kind of like almost like the Anthony Barr, that there's some mystery about what's next. So
there's some mystery. Yes. And I was pressured. a little bit, because they're like, you need to release that one like this week. And I go, but it's just in the queue. Like, you gotta be patient. So that one will come out next week.
All right, Ben. Well, I appreciate you being our inaugural guest. I hope that you will return in a couple months or whatnot. But that's all we got. And we'll be back with Lindsey Young on Wednesday. And Skol, baby.
Skol, man. Thanks, Dustin.